Here's a poem for you by the Swedish poet Tomas Transtromer in a translation by the American poet Robert Bly. The poem is titled After a Death. Once there was a shock that left behind a long, shimmering comet tail. It keeps us inside. It makes the TV pictures snowy. It settles in cold drops on the telephone wires. One can still go slowly on skis in the winter sun through brush where a few leaves hang on. They resemble pages torn from old telephone directories, names swallowed by the cold. It is still beautiful to hear the heart beat, but often the shadow seems more real than the body. The samurai looks insignificant beside his armor of black dragon scales. I'm Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. Thank you for joining me. This is a marvelous poem. I love how it goes straight to the heart of things. The title is After a Death, so we know what's going on. We know the situation. And so he doesn't need to explain. And he doesn't bother to explain. He doesn't say who died. He doesn't say the circumstances, how the person died, anything like that. We don't know the relationship of the poet, presumably, Tomas Transtromer, to this person. We just have the death itself. It makes it universal, which is helpful, but it does more than that. It just kind of, in a way, reduces it to its most elemental quality. It's a poem not about what happened, but about how it feels. And Transtromer has this amazing ability, amazing way with metaphor and simile. He was a psychologist for all of his life. He worked as a psychologist, which is a very interesting thing for a poet to be. Sometimes I feel a kinship with therapy, psychology type people. And why is that? Well, I feel that because the psychologist is interested on what is going on inside, not the outer surface, but what's happening inside. What's happening inside you, that man over there, that lady over there? What do they feel inside them? What's happening? What are the processes going on, the thunderstorms and angels inside them? So Tomas Transtromer, I feel that in this poem, he just goes right to the heart of this experience. After a Death, it's called. Once there was a shock that left behind a long, shimmering comet tail. Interesting way to begin. It's like a story. Once there was a blank. Once there was a king, a queen. Once there was a thief named Barney who stole potatoes. Oh, sorry, I just made that up. Once there was a shock that left behind a long, shimmering comet tail. And he goes from the shimmer of that comet tail to the shimmer, sort of static on a television screen. And I guess a lot of us don't see that anymore, but it's something that we used to see, and was, that just wild, gray, rowdy chaos that you see on a TV screen. Once there was a shock that left behind a long, shimmering comet tail. It keeps us inside. It makes the TV pictures snowy. Marvelous how that phrase, it keeps us inside, it moves like we're looking at a comet outside and then we're inside watching TV, basically. It settles in cold drops on the telephone wires. Interesting. Again, we have this communication. We have telephone wires, but communication is... first, it's messed up in the sense of the TV being just static, and then the telephone wires are cold, which I guess isn't a problem if you're a message in a telephone wire. But still, there's something about it which seems like communication is slowed or something like that. This poem is in 3 stanzas, so that's the first stanza. Now we get the second one, and it's beautiful. Each stanza just kind of jumps deeper towards the subject. So here's the second one, right? One can still go slowly on skis in the winter sun, through brush where a few leaves hang on. Interesting. One can still go slowly. The fragile, sort of penitent, humble quality to that line. It's still possible to go forward slowly. We didn't even talk about what was possible and what was not. We just know this shock has happened, and now it's like, oh, you can still go, but slowly. It's as though we're being very careful here. It's almost as though he's skiing over like a frozen lake or something. I mean, he doesn't say that, but that's how it feels to me. One can still go slowly on skis in the winter sun, through brush where a few leaves hang on. You know how that is. Autumn comes, the leaves fall from the trees, but then winter comes and a few leaves sometimes hang on, those last relics still there. Beech in particular, right? Beech trees they keep their leaves a long time. Oak trees too. They resemble pages torn from old telephone directories. Names swallowed by the cold. We get this leap. The leaves on the trees in the winter air, the winter wind, the winter sun, he says, but I'm imagining the air. Those leaves are like pages torn out of old telephone directories. Names swallowed by the cold. Of course, you use the telephone directory to talk to people. Now, most of us, we don't even have these anymore. None of us do. But these phone books would have the names of everyone alive, you know. Names swallowed by the cold. And then we get the last stanza. It is still beautiful to hear the heart beat, but often the shadow seems more real than the body. The samurai looks insignificant beside his armor of black dragon scales. Marvelous. It's almost a crime to talk about this poem, really. I mean, these images are they're meant to just sit there like a dream you had. And like a dream, you're just like, what the heck does that mean? But for me, at least, it means right away. I can't explain why it works, but it works. That's my first reaction. Now, recording this, looking at the poem, well, I can see a little more how it works. It is still beautiful to hear the heartbeat, but often the shadow seems more real than the body. It's as if he's saying death seems more real than life, right? The shadow is more real. That's what's true. After the death, right? You've experienced the death of someone you knew, someone perhaps close to you, and that seems more real than everything else. It drowns everything else out. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I have, you know. You wake up and you're like, oh, yeah, that's it. I felt that way after my dad died. You know, he died, and it's just you wake up every morning and that's the reality. And the sun's out, the birds are there, you know. Life goes on in its cruel and beautiful way, but still that death seems the most important thing. And then we get these last two lines. The samurai looks insignificant beside his armor of black dragon scales. Now notice how these images in this poem, they leap quite a far distance, but they do also connect. Because we had the shadow seems more real than the body, and we move from the shadow to the armor of black dragon scales. And what's marvelous is the way the armor protects someone. It protects the samurai from death, right? That's what it's meant to do. The armor protects the samurai from swords and arrows. It protects him, keeps him from dying. But I don't know. I mean, there's a thing about armor. Armor is sort of ghostly, especially when there's no one inside it, you know? And they're black dragon scales. Such a great, vivid image, you know, bang, wow, dragon scales. I mean, it's fantastical, but it's just great. So in this state of mind that we're in this poem, it's as if the shadow is more real than the body. The armor is the main thing, and the person it was meant to protect is nothing, is insignificant, is less meaningful. It's a marvelous poem, I think, and it feels like it's almost written entirely in the dream world, as if it were written underwater almost. All of these images that go from one to the other and just make this whole experience. It's not a code for something else. It's not like he could have written this a different way. It's not like it's just, it is the experience. It's like a song about something. It's fantastic. I guess I have to mention as well, this is just kind of funny, but when he talks about the leaves, they resemble pages torn from old telephone directories, names swallowed by the cold. I can't help thinking, I'm just going to share this, of when I was in the warehouse district of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I lived about 30 years ago. And I was with my friend Andre at the time looking for a pizza place in this cool, funky neighborhood. And this is before the internet, before phones. And I couldn't remember where it was. And it's January in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. And it's below freezing for sure. I don't know. It's probably like 0 outside. But I had this routine, and one of these tricks of the time was to find a telephone directory, because there were still payphones. I mean, they were getting phased out, but there still were some. And often they'd have a telephone directory dangling from the phone. So I remember going at night, there's a phone directory, there's a payphone there. And I went and I tried to open it and look for the address of the pizza place. But the thing is, it was so cold, this telephone directory was just frozen solid. I mean, that's not exactly right. It wasn't frozen like it was wet, but it was just so cold. It was like crackling. And I was able to open it. I can't honestly remember if I used it to get the address or if we just remembered, but I can't help thinking of that. I've lost touch with Andre, but I remember that moment we shared looking for this cool pizza place in the cold and the darkness of Minnesota in January. Now, I lived in Minnesota, and Mr. Tomas Transtromer here is from Sweden, so I suppose we could wonder if there's if there's something of the ecosystem speaking in this poem, something of the place, something of the inward quality often attributed to Scandinavian writers, right? I mean, that's the cliche. You know, you go to Italy, go to Greece, and it's a big party, sunlight, wine, sunshine. That's why we love it. That's why we go to Florida, even though culturally it's not that way, but you know what I mean. We go south to live the full paradise life. We go north to be in darkness and to meditate and to look at the inner nature of things, perhaps. Now, those are cliches. I'm not saying they're true, but I am asking the question if there is something like that here. Certainly for me, I mean, I don't know, this is not a podcast about my life, but I've started this sentence, so I better end this sentence somehow. When I lived in Minnesota, I was looking for inward time. I was looking for permission to go inside and write poems and read books and stuff and pay attention to my dreams. And I felt that summer, the big sunny life, you know, July, June, oh no, the world doesn't want you to do that. The world wants you to go to the beach, to sing a song, run around, go to the party, you know. Well, once again, this isn't entirely true, but these are the thoughts that come to me. I felt a certain inward quality, a permission given to me by the climate and the landscape to go inside. And I feel that similar quality in the poetry of Tomas Transtromer. And I am just asking the question if there is something cultural going on here or something of him. No, it's probably both. But I love this poem and its dreamlike nature, which seems so true. So I'm going to read it one more time. Thank you for joining me and for exploring this poem. After a death. Once there was a shock that left behind a long, shimmering comet tail. It keeps us inside, It makes the TV pictures snowy. It settles in cold drops on the telephone wires. One can still go slowly on skis in the winter sun, through brush where a few leaves hang on. They resemble pages torn from old telephone directories, names swallowed by the cold. It is still beautiful to hear the heartbeat, but often the shadow seems more real than the body. The samurai looks insignificant beside his armor of black dragon scales.